Hey, how's it going? Welcome back. Before we get into the loops and getting all loopy, I just want to give a shout out to the community. I really appreciate all the likes, all the subscribes, and the comments. Keep it up. If you're new here, don't forget to like and subscribe. Obviously, you have a passion for the shell, so if you want to get more updates on that shell, hit that bell. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into some loops. Alright, so today we'll be hitting the shell, obviously, like we always do, with some loops until we drop. So we'll go ahead and kick that off, and we're going to kind of dive into things. So the first loop we have is a for loop. I don't use this too often. It's a little bit quicker than a for each, especially when you're doing piping. So that's some use cases when it's used. But basically, you kind of set a variable. That's basically your incrementer. So we're going to increment by 1, and then as long as I is equal to 1 when we start, and then as long as it's less than 5, it's going to go. And then after the first iteration, it's going to add 1 to it. So it's going to just go through each time until it hits 5. And then with that, we're going to be printing out the I variable, and you'll be able to see it increment each time. So let's see, for loop is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is good for when you know how many times you need to loop through a loop. Again, you don't typically use this too often. There's some special use cases for it. A lot of people would rather use Foreach-Object, but with a pipe, if you're trying to do it quicker than Foreach-Object, this is a kind of a quicker method from what I've read online in the past. Now, our next one is a for each, and this is when you kind of know the beginning and end. You know how big your list of items are, or your array, or like how many servers you have, or services, or colors, right? So you're going to go for each item in that array until you get to the end, basically. So here's our array colors. So we'll go ahead and set that. Obviously, we know colors from the previous videos. If you haven't seen those, go ahead and tune into them. We'll go ahead and print out that array of colors. We see we have red, green, and blue. And then basically, the best way to think about a for each loop, if you've never seen one before, is think about you're making this color variable on the just on the fly. So color equals red, color equals green. So that's basically a placeholder for the array of colors. So when it goes through the first iteration, it takes the first item out of the array, which is red. It'll put it in color, and then it will process that color. And then the next one, it will update the color variable. So think of it like that. So that's why we use plural variables, so you can tell which one is the array and which one isn't. So we'll go ahead and run this and see what the output is. Obviously, you can see for each loop, color is red, is green, is blue. Obviously, if you add one more in there, it will show that color as well. Now with the pipeline, it's the same process. There's a for each dash object, and then you have your script braces. So if we do get process, as we've seen before, we have a lot of processes on our machine. We'll go ahead and use that pipeline from our previous videos. We're only going to select the first 3. So instead of getting all the processes, we're just grabbing the first 3 of them in the list. And then for each one of those, so we know there's 3, we're going to process those. And again, using that pipe, we're going to be using that alias $_, and then we're going to be printing out that property name of the process. Again, this could be PS item from other videos that you've seen. So basically, for each one of those, we're just going to write out to the screen with the right host. We're going to write the word process : and then the name of the process. So hopefully this is kind of making sense now as we get further in these videos. If you've not seen the previous videos, go ahead and tune into those. But that's basically that output there. So far, if you're with me, you're a PowerShell Pro. You're on your way to success. The next one is a while loop. Now, the best way I like to describe a while loop is think of something you don't know the end of. You don't know when you're going to be done. You don't know how long that list of servers is. Maybe there's constantly being added or something like that, and you're pulling this data constantly. You don't know when it ends. That's when you use a while loop. So basically, you make a variable, and while that's true, it's going to kind of iterate through. So count equals 1. So while that's true, count equals 1. And then while count is less than 3, so while that's true, keep processing this data, right? So, and then once a certain condition is met, which will make count greater than 3, right? Because we're iterating through this loop and we're adding a count. Once it hits that limit, it'll stop. So we'll go ahead and run this real fast so you can kind of see that. So while loop count is 1, is 2, is 3. Another thing you can do is you can do something like this. So you can say running equals true, and then you can like iterate through users and computers and all this stuff, but again, you don't know where the end is, but you know logically how you want to do it. So like, let's say you're going through and you're getting all the user accounts and you're unlocking them for some reason, right, in Active Directory, but other accounts keep getting locked out, so you don't know when it ends. So you could put in here, you know, if there's no accounts left, right, we'll just put, obviously this isn't a real logical one, but no accounts left. So if this is the case, then you could just say running equals false. And then that once that logic hit, like if you're doing get 80 users, give me all the users that are locked out, and then eventually there won't be any, and then it will trigger this if statement, right? So if get 80 user filter disabled or whatever, it'll set running to false, and then your while loop will stop. So I always like to say again, while loops are usually used when you don't know the end of something. There's also a do while loop. So this is where there's also a do until I don't have in here. I'll have to touch on that later. But a do while loop is basically do this thing first and then check the condition. So this one here, we just run the code. Like we don't check, there's no checks or anything, right? So the opposite is do this and then check the loop. So it's a little bit different. So like check if there is unlocked or locked out users. Oh, there's not. I'm not going to iterate through anymore. Or a while loop, it's going to execute all the code, right? So there's certain use cases for do while. We'll go ahead and highlight this, run it, and there you go. So attempt 0, attempt 1, right? So a little bit different than the other operation. So, and it's got its own special use cases too. The most part, when I'm using scripting, most of my scripts have for each. I've used while before, especially when I'm used to do like nested groups in AD, which now you can use recursive, but a long time ago you couldn't, or at least I didn't know about it a long time ago. So just specific use cases when you don't know the end of anything. But now we're to the best part of the video, the challenge. So let's go ahead and pivot over to the challenge. All right, here's the challenge. So create an array with 5 animals. Use a for each loop to print the message out, I love that animal, for each one. And then use a for loop to number, use a for loop to number them from 1 to 5. So obviously you should be able to do that. Just boom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for your animals. If you have any questions on this challenge, let me know. But thanks again for tuning in. Again, thank you again for coming, checking out these videos. If you have other ideas or want to see other things, I have a bunch of other videos in the works, but I'm trying to keep them short and sweet so you don't have to sit here all day just to learn PowerShell. So thank you and have a good night.